My dudes, what's happening, man? This is Trent, and I have been a concept artist at Blizzard, Wrath of the Lich King, Burning Crusade, Diablo 3, Overwatch. I've been a concept artist on League of Legends, Legends of Runeterra. I did some contract work on Fortnite. I run an art house. We do a lot of contract concept art for big AAA games. On top of that, I am a gamer. I do play video games. This thing's bugging me. It's right in the... I got a new camera set up here, by the way. Let me just move a few things. This should be we should run a little smoother. So I wanted to go through, I basically unlocked all of the concept art from Resident Evil 8, and I wanted to go through it and kind of give my initial, or just a reaction. This is just my reaction to concept art from a modern, I guess you'd say, a big AAA game that is nothing like anything that I've ever made. Okay, I guess Diablo 3 was kind of dark fantasy, but it wasn't like this at all. This is photorealistic, dark, gothic horror, survival horror. And so, I wanted to do a walkthrough of just some of the reactions that I had to a lot of the concept art that I unlocked in the game. So come on along and let's skim through it. First of all, to get all this stuff, you have to go through, and I beat the game 5 times. I'm on my 6th playthrough, Village of Shadows. Hell yeah, unlocking some secret ultimate weapons. I won't cover those. No spoilers in this one, by the way. So you have to unlock all of the concept art. And the first thing that you get to is this one, Rosemary Winters, grown up. So when we're looking at this, a lot of people will think, man, that's a really good painting, But the thing is that what you're going to find in a lot of this concept art is the sheer amount of photo bashing that's going on and photo bash effects. So what you're going to see here is like this jacket over here. There is no way that jacket is painted. In fact, I'll point out the areas where the concept artist actually painted. This is a composite of a lot of materials from possibly from a Corbis account or some kind of a photo library, composite shots to get the likeness and the look. They'll use some filters over the character's face so that it looks painted, but this is not a painting. And a lot of beginners out there might go, well, that seems unfair. That seems like cheating. But the fact is, it's a photorealistic game. Usually console game development, they only have about 18 months to develop. It's very rare, especially I think with Capcom, they mostly just do about 18 months of development, but they do a lot of iterative design in the sense that like Resident Evil 3 Nemesis remake, they reused a lot of assets from their previous game in that, and they're working very cleverly, they're working very smart. They're using also a lot of real capture. They use a Simplygon, which is a company that creates 3D captures of locations, real world locations, and then they composite them into the game. You'll notice their logo at the beginning of the game because it's so many of their assets are not built by 3D modelers, but they are modified by 3D modelers. And their concept art as well is derived mostly from photos. So you'll notice this is a photo, probably a composite of multiple actors, unless if they paid this actor for the likeness rights. But she doesn't actually look like that in the game. You'll see other images where she looks very different. So this is Chris Redfield. So here you can definitely see there's a lot of photo bashy going on with the jacket, with the shoes. This jacket here, you can see the line work. This is drawn in, so you can really definitely see how they are integrating some drawings into it. I did figure out how to remove these, the layout in some of the future concepts here. Here we go. This you can definitely see. This is a paint daubs filter effect that was done over a photo to save time. And then this is a composite of probably something from a military collection of photos that they use a filter effect over the top of. There's very little painting going on in any of these shots. This right here is a painted element, and this is a painted element, and you can tell because the lighting is just a little bit off. There is no reason to paint an AK-47. I think that's an AK-47. It might be an M16. I'm not a gun buff, so if I get some things wrong, you have to forgive me. There's a lot of compositing of photos going on here, and that's why we're also seeing the repeat of the same helmet on these for their night vision goggles. These jeans, there's no way they rendered those, but the lighting is a little inconsistent with the boots, so you can tell that that's a photo bash. This is an obvious photo bash. These shots, definitely composite shots. You can see the materials on the jacket here. There's some elements, let me see if I can find, I think the faces have been modified. These might be actually renders from in-game, like if they took the shot after. It's strange because sometimes the concept artist comes in after they've already got a 3D model of a character's face. A lot of times what they're doing, and if you watch the behind the scenes on the Phantom Pain, you'll see where they're just capturing now. They'll just capture an actor's face in different expressions. You'll see them with like 80 cameras around them, and they'll just go like, and they'll have to do an expression, and then they capture that. You know, all those cameras will capture that one look, and then it transposes that information, that data, into a 3D model. And then once they have that, they can give that to a concept artist who will then place it into, a Photoshop file, and then begin to composite photographs of clothing around them. In this case, I think possibly some of the posing here was modified, and then giving him the machete that was probably not from a posed photo. That you can tell that it's a photo bash because of the materials on the jackets and on the outfits. This is more than likely a composite of 3D elements. The elements that you can't pull out of a book of photographs or from some historical reference are going to be the elements that are going to be really sketched in loose like this. And you can kind of see a kind of a gothic pattern here that maybe they could have pulled that from a book or something like that. These are obviously like pulled from some kind of reference material, maybe castle corners or filigree pattern work like what you would see in a German castle. If you go to some of these castles in Germany, you'll see like filigree pattern work like this in the walls, and they've definitely pulled from very famous locations that I recognize. These elements, though, these brooches, these stone, these are the tops of the flasks, I just realized. And they are actually probably modeled in ZBrush. They do a lot of 3D when they do these photorealistic kind of shots, because it's faster to build that in 3D and then light it, like just give it a bronze material or a silver, copper, whatever. Give it a material and then put a couple of lights in that shot. It takes less time to do that and get it looking accurate than it does to actually paint it out. So that's what I think that we're looking at here. And photo bashing is a lot of fun, but a lot of times amateurs will photo bash and they won't understand. They're not designing with intention. They're just using it because they don't want to learn to paint. This photo bashing is done by an artist who knows how to paint, but uses photos to save time. Here's a very clear indicator. This doily kind of pattern that's going on in this character's outfit. Now this is meant to be a doll, so it's meant to look like a doily. So there's a lot of photo bashing going on in this part. These elements are painted. These elements are actually drawn and painted, and you can tell because you can see loose brush strokes, and a really masterful painter just uses implied brush strokes. And I'm going to show you what I'm talking about when we get to some of the environment shots. They have really good painters. This is painted almost entirely, you can tell. And this is painted almost entirely, you can tell. There's some photo bashing of wings going on in this part, but this is entirely painted, that ring. I really wish I would have turned off that UI. When do we get to the ones where I turned off the UI? Anyway, there's a lot to cover here, so let's move on. This is composite with painted elements, and I think this is a good example of, like, if you want to get work as a concept artist, like, this is usually more of the high level, high concept kind of a illustration that you would use when you're presenting an idea. You're pitching the theme, the mood, and you're pitching it to non-artists. Like, you got to prove to the executives and the stakeholders, the marketing guys, the decision makers who aren't artists, you have to show them some representation of what the feel and the mood of some of these characters and locations are about. But you can tell here, you can see the paint daubs or the median filter effect from rooftops of structures, from old huts, from like definitely in this wheel. And it would be ridiculous for you to sit down and try to actually paint that wheel when, if you have photo reference for it, or a photo, I hate to use that term because that confuses that idea between photo bashing and photo reference. Now, when I draw, I don't use any photo bashing these days. When I look at a photo reference, I'm not using it in my piece. I'm looking at it and I'm understanding how it's constructed. Whereas in this piece, it's like they are breaking it down and literally putting it into their shot. They are cutting out that wheel, putting it into their shot, and then running a filter over top of it to make it look like it's painted. This background is very likely just a photo from a European snowy forest, or maybe Midwest. Here you can definitely see a lot of the photo bashing, but there's more painting going on in this one than some of the others. Definitely here in the materials, and this is a lot of it is brush effects with a lot of noise on them. So you'll get this dirty, grimy kind of a looking brush. And I should probably break down exactly how they do all of this. When I'm looking at it, it's like, I see how they're doing it. And it's not, it sounds coggy for me to say that, but like this isn't hard to do, but you do have to have some knowledge and understanding of lighting, like getting these shadows right. A lot of times when people photo bash, if you don't understand how painting works and how to paint light, for instance, you might forget those shadows and then it just stands out as looking like it doesn't fit. Now, when it comes to character likenesses, you have to be very careful with this sort of a thing. If you just take a photograph of a soldier, for instance, and you put it in as a character design, you're going to get sued for that because if somebody used your likeness in a video game, that you could sue them, basically, if you look like that character. And there's been a few famous cases in the game industry in the last few years about exactly that topic. So this is definitely a photo bashed jacket. Nobody even put a brush stroke on that. They may have darkened the value. They may have done a filter effect to get a little bit of a paint daub or a median kind of a blurry painted looking effect on it so that it looks painted, but that is not painted. That is definitely a photo bash, and that was done probably fairly quickly, maybe with the face if they did a liquefy effect. And maybe even popped out a few highlights. But because of the style that you see that this artist paints in future images, here we go. This is a perfect example where you can see this is a composite of a photo bash. So the background is entirely photo. This character back here that's silhouetted was done as a selection with an airbrush filled to create this illusion that it's another one of them. Just like him, because he has a similar build. It's a humanoid. We get like the implied gesture of it, the flowing hair, that kind of like shape of the raggedy clothes. And then they do a blur effect on it. And then all that becomes monochromatic. Now here, you can definitely see, they zoomed in on the face and you can definitely see, is this the one where I got rid of? Yeah, that's the one where I got rid of that. Yeah, interface, the screen. Yeah. So here you can definitely see how the brush strokes, this is the style that the painter actually paints in. So this is a photograph of a face, possibly maybe a 3D render of a zombie face from Resident Evil 2, for example. That's what I would do. I would just take an existing 3D model from their world and I would use that as a base. And if you know that colors don't matter, or your values matter, then you convert that to grayscale and you start adding in color over top of that gray to get this kind of the eye here, probably pulled from that. And then all this is just loose brush strokes and brush textures, kind of like what I have in my brush set actually, to get this grimy kind of snow effect on the tops. And then obviously, like, because it's blurry, if you just paint those highlights in on kind of like a color dodge layer, you're probably going to get this kind of an edge on things. This is a composite of the chest as well. I think that there was probably either a 3D model or there is an actor that they put in for that. The reason you can tell that this is a photo bash is because the shadows are inconsistent with the ground. That's not photorealistic lighting on the floor, on the ground. So that's, and then on top of that, you can see these folds are a little bit too accurate. They're a little bit too real. So I think that that's probably from a photo, but here you can definitely see the brush strokes in the hair and the crusty snow on the head. Here, same story over again. And here you can even see how This particular artist's painted style is a very loose brush stroke with a lot of selections and texture brush inside of that. So this right here is carved out using a texture. And I would guess that probably the head or the eye of this horse is painted, mostly in silhouette. Actually, most of this shot right here is in fact painted, whereas like the chest on this is very much a photo bashed in. As well as this kneecap right here, you can see the texture on it. This is the same face from the previous image, by the way, just given a different treatment. You see that? It's just flipped. It's just mirrored. You can even see this is the same line under the eye. Look right here. You see that like dark line? It's the same line on the next image. It's the same line under that eye right there. And the mouth open like that. It might even be the same chest. So a lot of times what people might not realize is that once you've painted something for a concept, like let's say that you're working on designing a lichen, for instance, you're going to design one of them that's like, okay, that's the body type. Okay. Then we're doing like 10 or 15 different quick iterations to find the clothing style, the variants, the slightly different take on that character. You're reaching for what's going to give it an overall unique, different look from the previous iteration that you've done that still fits the game design of what the designer wants. This one is, oh boy, hang on. Skip through it pretty fast. This one is mostly painted because it's mostly silhouette. The background, 90% photo bashed. This is just a background to set the lighting information and the mood and atmosphere. It's very brilliant, actually. I might even start incorporating a little bit more of that technique, not with photos, but like set up your environments, have a lot of environments, and then if your environments are the mood and atmosphere of the game that you're doing concept for, then putting your character in there, you're going to be able to pull lighting information, like having this intense backlight and then the steam and the smoke from the hot breath. Gives this character that punch. It gives it like a sense of this is for Resident Evil 8. Like this is survival horror in a snowy winter area, you know, like wintry forest. So this is photo bashed. The fur, you can tell right here. Really notice it a lot more on bigger screens, by the way. But this right here, totally photo bashed, and then they've extrapolated on that using some really wispy, loose brush strokes to get this reflective light. Very clever angling by making this backlit. We then see that the character is very almost dark, and I almost feel like it's a little cheap because like mostly silhouetted with just this rim light on things. There was a guy I worked with on Diablo 3 that he did that a lot. He would almost entirely silhouette his character, and then he would do this like hard edge light to turn forms, and it would give you this impression that the character was really in like dark shadow, but you could still see what you were looking at. It's a very clever technique. Didn't we cover this one? Yeah, we did. Here we go. I must have skipped around a little. Definitely photo bashed. So this is, there's a lot of selections going on here. This jacket arm was not painted. This jacket arm is photo bash. You can definitely see the photo bashing going on in the fur of this beard. And then there's a layer above that has all of the noisy blood that's spattered with texture brushes. And then you've got a dodge and burn effect going on across the top of this to really make that highlight of this fuzzy hair pop out. Likely done with a selection. Most of the form and the posing of this was cut out and then modified from photos with a little bit of that selection and then a very nice texture brush over the top of it to make it grimy and dirty and filthy. The hammer is almost entirely painted, and you can definitely see that the hands are painted on here. We don't need to see the details of these hands unless there's information in those hands that it's essential for us to see, that his nails are like gonna be up close to the camera in one shot or something like that. The modeler will probably be pissed that they don't get a close-up of those hands, but unless if there's like details, if he's got rings or you know, some kind of a straps around it or wrappings or something like that, maybe you do need it for something like that. The hammer, getting back to the hammer, What's clever about this, they use a lot of the photo texturing, and a lot of times, a lot of these artists will like paint with selections using just a flattened material that's cut out from like a collection of materials. That's what this is in the beard. This image can be done in like, I don't know, maybe 3 hours, 2 or 3 hours. And especially if you're doing like really loose lighting on this. And the more you know about lighting, the smoother that's going to go. This one is mostly painted. This one is an actual custom design for Lady Dimitrescu. And so you can kind of see that there's maybe a little bit of photo on this clustering of the way that the folds collect here. But all of this loose, sketchy stuff is the actual painted stuff that's going on. That's the actual design work. Very custom job. When you're doing, you'll notice that a lot of the custom stuff that you don't see in the real world are drawn here. So this hat, I'm actually surprised that the hat is, drawn out like this. Why would you draw that if there's an existing hat that, captures that exact look? So I'm a little surprised by this. This might be a different artist that's handling this one. You can definitely see in the loose brush strokes. And a lot of you might be going, well, that doesn't make any sense. How's that fair? Like I could do a bunch of scribbles and stuff. Well, the thing is it's designed with a lot of intention. And again, like I said, this artist does know how to paint. But this is like raw design work. And I'm actually surprised they even released this image, to be honest. Most of the time, they just want it to look glamorous, so they won't show it. This is an obvious photo bash as well. Photo bashing a lot of the elements of the characters' faces, probably from models. These are not painted. These are not custom painted. These are photo bashed. And this is surprising to see coming from a Japanese studio. And I have to look up who did the actual concept art for this game. And if I find it, I'm going to post it on the screen. But yeah, this is an obvious photo bash. It's interesting that like they didn't even bother to communicate the details of the pattern work throughout the whole outfit. They look great in game. And it certainly captures the mood and the intention and the atmosphere of the character when they're in the scene. What was fascinating is when you look at the character model viewer, her flowing outfit looks so good. Oh my god! And that is not communicated in this image. But I think this might have been in like an early sketch of the character, because later I'll show you some that are a little bit more clear. So this is a combination of photo bash and paint. You can definitely see the eyes, I think, are from a sort of a standardized zombie face that they have, sort of an undead zombie face. Maybe the concept artist has some resources that they've built. A big part of being a concept artist is building your own resources, custom brushes that suit the job that you're working on. It's like, if you know you're going to be designing a game with a lot of undead monsters, you're going to want to have a lot of texture brushes for grime and metal and chains and like blood and hair, like wispy psycho hair, like undead flesh, clusters of blobs of creature goo. Like, you're going to want to have those resources as photos, as textures, as brushes, those are just some things that you're going to need. This shot right here is might even be from a rough 3D model. The thing that makes me think it's from a rough 3D model is some of the lighting on the leg here and the sword itself. This concept artist doesn't put a lot of time into like tiny details, but there is this, like, this is definitely photo bashed cloth right here, for example, flowing robes, and this is the face here as well. But then the eyes are painted. The hair is obviously painted. You can see the brush strokes. A lot less attention to detail as you get lower down the body, because that's not the important part. The important part is that we see the mouth. We see the intensity of this thing coming at you. Another very clever thing that was done here. Look at this background. They put it into a setting. So it feels like that's the mood. That's the atmosphere. That's where the bounced light, any of this lighting coming off of the character here is like bouncing off of that. This one here, you can also see a lot of the loose brush strokes, but then you get this really tight, realistic looking detail of these folds in the eyes. And I have to wonder how much of this is like maybe it started from a rough ZBrush model. Like, that's the way I would approach this. If I were working on Resident Evil 9 or whatever, I'd be definitely doing something with ZBrush to get some base kind of zombie faces and heads with creepy textures. This looks like a bump map on the face right here. And you definitely see it in the consistency of lighting across these elements. But then that consistency of lighting doesn't extend to other areas like the ear, for instance. It's like it's easy to get texture like this when you photo bash it, or when you pull it from a ZBrush model that's just, you know, kind of top down lit. But then you'll notice that there's a lot of these textures in the wings as well, which kind of seems like maybe this artist is pulling out all their stops. They've got like maybe they looked up some like, you know, slaughtered animals and like pulled elements of sinew and like just grotesqueness from these slaughtered animals, and then photo bash that together with some hanging cloth. This leg right here is painted, and there is an understanding of shadow and light in the shot. We're definitely seeing the important parts to make our eye understand like what it is that we're looking at. But it's minimal. This page could be done in like, you know, probably 6 hours, 5 or 6 hours if you know what you're doing. This one is almost entirely painted, except for some of the textures that we see here with these scales, probably from like a lizard, and then maybe this is like a part of like a wing or a bat or something like that. But this is almost entirely painted, and this is more true to form to what this artist's painting style is really like. Very loose and gestural, but somewhat accurate when it comes to the convincing lighting, you know, and materials. This is definitely 3D. Like this is probably from a rough geometry ZBrush model, this figure, because the character actually ends up looking very little like this. But notice how like things get really loose in some parts. It's like this may have been like an early sketch, not really something that usually studios want to show. This is not going to get framed and put in the Capcom museum, so to speak, you know, but very essential and very useful for game development. Here we go. Yeah, look, ZBrush model. This is not rendered. This is a ZBrush model. We know that because we're looking at it rotating, and we're looking at like how like the artist was working this out in ZBrush as they were developing the design. So I would be very curious to find out if the character modeler who built this monster was also the concept artist on it. Maybe that's their job. Maybe they're intertwined. This image is very much like mostly, oh, here we can see that's the same shot. Okay, perfect example. And if you were doubting me before, I know a few things because look at right here's some freaking evidence. This right here is that doily. It's the same figure. The face design changed. So this probably came first before the previous image of that doll that we saw earlier in the concept art. And so what we're seeing here is that they had worked out the body of the doll. And in fact, they may have even straight up took it from photos from like Etsy where somebody just makes dolls. And then they maybe like changed the face, changed several of the elements so that it's unrecognizable, and then put some dirt and grime on it to make it really creepy. Definitely like looking at like how they're playing around with adding the moon. This is the element, this is the shape that was in the flask design that we saw. So there's consistency of design across these elements that tie them together. This character is disfigured in the game, but we never really see much of her until after she's dead. Yeah. This is a photograph with a right here, this mouth photograph. But you can't just straight up use a photograph, so they drew some lines around the jaw to define it so that she looks different. So they're not using the likeness of somebody that exists. This right here, very cool veil, by the way. I'm guessing probably photo texture. You can definitely see the photo texturing going on in the doilies here around the outside of this. Well, this is going to be a long video. Here we have more doll explorations. Obviously photo composites from existing like old German looking dolls. Maybe German. I don't even want to look at that. Lots of photo bashing going on here too for the guts. This is definitely a photo bash of the knee here. Mostly painted. This one's mostly painted because there isn't much that you could pull photos from, but doesn't look much like that in the game. This character Moreau looks awesome in game. And this is like just part of the process of how it got there. It's interesting that they show the breakdown of like how the cordeau, I think it's called the cordeau or something like that, like attached to his spine. That's really interesting. And this is a combination of photo bash with, so these eyes are done in ZBrush, the upper body, the musculature along this arm done in ZBrush. Again, adding this atmosphere. This is just a cave. This is a photograph of a cave, probably from like Thailand or something. I don't know. Caves. I don't even know where a cave is in the world. There's no distinguishing element. But regardless, it sets some lighting information. So when you set up a background shot like that, you set up the lighting information so that when you go in and you start adding these rim lights and such, it starts to really like put the character into the shot. And this is why it's important for you to understand lighting before you go and jump right into photo bashing. And a lot of people are just going to go, I just want to photo bash because look at how they did it in Resident Evil. But yeah, I'm surprised that they showed a lot of this. This is real concept art. Like when you're in game development, you see a lot, you do a lot of this kind of stuff where you'll get a 3D model and it's like somebody goes, hey, can you like sketch out like how to explain that this part, like how this dude spits out gunk from his mouth, or like where the body of the figure of the character comes out of his mouth. Like you'll have to do a lot of this kind of stuff. And I'm blown away. I am blown away. I give so much props and respect to Capcom. And I mean, I used to work at Capcom years and years ago, long before before Resident Evil 4, I'd say. And a very different process, but man, they props to them for having the guts to show all of their concepts, like all the gruesome stuff, the behind the scenes stuff. Photo bashed character mostly. You can see the painted elements. You can see that the hat is painted, but you can see that the face is very, very clearly painted over an actor. This shot right here might be more painted than anything else in this whole thing. Yeah. God, that guy was really frustrating on Village of Shadows. Oh, this thing. Oh, this guy. Yeah, I died several times. This is a composite of junk from a scrap heap. You can get junkyard photos, smash them together, use some atmosphere and fog. Very cleverly doing a mirror or a copy paste effect in the background to make it seem like there are other mechanical elements. This is straight up drawn. This is like a lot of times when you're doing concept art or designs, you'll do something like this sketch on the left here to work out like what's the overall impression and like what parts will I need, and then from that rough sketch, that's when you go like, okay, I need to like pull up a bunch of pieces. So you might buy like a kit of machine parts that are built in 3D. Yeah, you can buy those from like Turbo Squid or like the Unity Asset Store or Unreal Asset Store. Smash them together in ZBrush or Maya to create this kind of a monstrous, shape-sifted monster, and bam, you've got yourself a concept for a character right there. And I'm surprised that they didn't paint over this more. It's inaccurate to his scale right there, by the way. This one, oh yes, a lot of photo bash elements going on through these tubes and such, but very done with a lot of intention. It's like, here's the heat exhaust, like bam, like that's painted in, the kind of materials on the chest and the scarring and things like that. I'm actually surprised that this artist painted it. Very loose. Everything that's not important is loose. Why? Because you don't have time to dink around. Like I said, most console games are developed within a couple of years. Sometimes if you're lucky in console development, you'll get 2.5 years. Diablo 3 I worked on for 5 years. It was in development long before that, but they shut it down and then restarted when it moved to Blizzard South. Anyway, so this is mostly all 3D. There's no concept here, but this is concept. This is a little bit of photo bashing going on. Let me turn up my brightness just a little bit. There's a little bit of photo bashing going on in the face here. It looks like maybe some engine parts. And then the thing is like, if there's nothing like it that exists in reality, you have to build it in like a 3D model. And that's what you're seeing in these arms right here. Like this is a combination of 3D from a ZBrush model that was done and a rough sketch. And as an artist, as a concept artist, you probably get like 1 day to do something like this, and you might be given some parts from a 3D model, but you might have to go in and build out a rough ZBrush model to get there. A lot of this is ZBrushed. Like that's what we're looking at. This is photo bash from an airplane, obviously, like airplane parts. And then using a lot of dodge and burn to get these flame effects, and maybe even photo bashing in some flames. I'm surprised they didn't do a background piece. This is painted through here, but you can tell this back leg. It's a selection. Why? It's a pant leg. You don't need to render that, man. A lot of times, amateurs, beginners, people who have not shipped any games before, they'll put all this time and energy into rendering parts that we're never going to look at. They're not important to even have worked out into the design. And then the part that we do need to see, because it needs to be modeled, we won't even see in their concept, or we won't get call-outs and things like that. So this is a good example of that. I do think I am a little bit surprised that they didn't ask their concept artists to like pull out parts more, but I guess because it's based in a real world, you don't have to. And most of the elements that are unique are they're organic, and organics can be easily duplicated. It's like organic musculature and gunk you can work off of, like, you know, anatomy from creatures or animals, and it looks like mutated monster parts because most of us aren't used to seeing that kind of stuff. So like half of this guy's head might literally be from a photograph of a dead carcass of an animal, or, you know, these pustules could be, you know, something from like a fungus or a mold that's grown in the jungle somewhere from somebody's like vacation photos when they're just going through the jungle. This is another perfect example of how they used the photograph of a cave, and then they did this like really strong highlight and rim lighting on elements to make it stand out so that you can tell sort of what you're looking at. But from a modeler's perspective, like, props to the Capcom modelers, because a lot of times modelers will fight back and they'll say, no, I need to see like the details of what his belt buckle looks like. And it's like, do you though? You know, because that's not the stuff that's going to really sell the executives. Anyway, obvious photo here. This is not painted. Sorry. How can you tell? Look, the edge. The lighting is incorrect on there. There's a combination of photos going on in this, obviously copy pasted so that they could put in a Victorian kind of a celebration mask. This is using some ZBrush elements and wings, obviously, that are from a photo bash of wings from an animal. Man, okay. Whew. This gets a lot creepier when we get into this phase, and this is mostly painted. There was more work put into this painting than any other painting that I've shown you so far. Now, there are ones later when you get to the environments that are like, whew, guy knows what he's doing. But this one, you're talking about a lot of custom painted work here. None of these elements exist in reality except for maybe parts of the body, but very small elements of parts of the body. So even these textures on this material, it's like maybe that's like tree bark or something like that, or some kind of like a creepy alien kind of animal musculature, you know. But that's why all that had to be custom painted. This is not photo bashed at all. This is the most painted element in this whole collection of concept art so far. This right here is a little bit of a textured photo bash going on, and there are some like cheats done here. I can't zoom in too much, but really this one is impressive, and the character's presence in game very impressive as well. This did not capture how awesome it looks in game. This is one of the most awesome character designs from a boss fight in any game I ever played, man. Man, Miranda. That's what it is, Miranda. Now this is where we get into the real painted stuff. This is painted entirely, 100%. Stylized stuff, you can't photo bash stylized stuff like this. So this is, I would be very surprised if it's the same artists from everything we've seen up to this point. Now, if you don't know, to give you some context, there's a storybook section at the beginning of the game. You could watch it on YouTube. And it's done as like a creepy, dark storybook. And it's got a totally different vibe than everything else in the game. And you can really see it in, this seems out of place. Oh, Iron Steed. So yeah, because it's from the side and it's got, yeah, I get it. But definitely very stylized. So you're not going to get any, there's no photo bashing going on in this stuff at all. No texture work. Some of the brushes have a little bit of texture to them, but that's it. And then maybe some color dodge going on to get this glowing effect, but mostly that's just straight up painted. Ooh, kudos. I love, as an artist, this is my jam. I love this stuff because this is just straight up hardcore painting. And they did it like all these planes of depth that are going on. You got this blurry foreground element. I just tapped the microphone. Hope that didn't sound like thunder in your ear. This this stuff right here. Oh, there is some. Oh, you know what? Texture. Photo bashed texture in stylized art. Beautiful. Beautiful. And then the control of the view. I don't want to go into critiquing the piece. You get to this stuff and oh. Beautiful stuff. A little bit of photo bashing of the texture materials. Just materials. Remember what I was saying earlier? Like this artist collected a lot of stone materials, collected a lot of like paper textures, because this feels like paper cutouts a little bit, but it's got that dark, whimsical feel. I wouldn't be surprised if they went through a lot of iterations to get here. There's definitely a little bit of a Tim Burton influence from The Nightmare Before Christmas, but ooh, just beautiful, beautiful concept. Oh, look at that. Hang on. Here we go. Look at that. Woo. Juicy. This is a combination of photo bash. So the room in the game doesn't look anything like this. So, oh, by the way, what we're getting into right now is the painted storyboards for the cutscenes. So I wouldn't be surprised if this wasn't handled by a totally different company. A lot of times studios will just outsource something like this. So this is like a hotel room that they took a photo of. And these are actors. Notice that she does not look like how she looks in the rest of the game. Because this is just a photo of an actor. So this is painted in texture. They might have even posed some people to get this shot. And then they used a paint daubs effect. How can you tell? Because look, the shadows are inconsistent. This texture right here is an actual texture of a real coat. And then they added the character into the shot. So then they had to go in and add this highlight. And that's why that highlight doesn't follow the texture of the material underneath. That's how you can tell. That's how you can tell, man. It's a dead giveaway. They had to put a light over here to bounce off of the baby's face. But technically, the real lighting that we're seeing on her hair, for instance, and on the book, the real lighting would be right above her, right here. Not way the frick over here. This is totally wrong. But you know what? To the non-artist, you look at it and go, oh, I get it. I know this shot. I can see it. I can envision it. Fascinating stuff. Photograph of a maybe still shot from in-game or from an actual like hallway from an actual house for a lot of these elements. How do you know that? Because the accuracy of the lighting on this thing, and then the accuracy of the curves. There's very little painted work going on in here. And the reason you can tell, this is the dead giveaway every freaking time. The dead giveaway is, here we see some lines on this character. That's how the artist actually paints. Not with these perfect crisp lines. Look at this. Look at this thing. You think the same artist who sketched in those little edges on this thing is the same artist who painted that light? No. And you think that that same artist would get this accuracy and this lighting so precise, but yet over here we can actually see the brushstrokes? So this character is composited into a shot. Also, Chris Redfield, 6'3". In this shot, 6'4". What the hell? No, I'm just kidding. I'm just... yeah, but it's still beautiful, you know. And also, these shots are not about the character design, by the way. They are about the camera angle, the mood, the storytelling. Ooh, this is a juicy piece. I'm guessing this was one of the early promo pieces where they're trying to sell the concept of like, dudes, check it out. This is the meeting room pitch image. Dudes, the director sits down with the executives and the stockholders. Maybe not stockholders because they don't need to know yet. But he says, listen, or she says, listen. Here's the deal. Here's the pitch for Resident Evil Village. Resident Evil 8, right? And they go, oh, I love it already. It's a village, right? It works with our numerical Roman numerals. And then they go, bam, here's the image. While they're talking about all the stuff that you're going to do in first-person view, that's covered. Boom. We see We got the rifle right there. It's like an older style rifle, right? This is maybe they were watching what was that movie with the lichens and the vampire? Anyway, Underworld. Maybe they were watching that and they're like, yeah, we want that vibe. Because the Underworld 3, I think, had the same exact vibe. It's like snowy castles with lichens. Anyway, so and they got vampires in there too. Coincidence? So I believe this is the image they have open while they're having their meeting, and they're going, it's kind of a little bit of a Metroidvania village that you're going to be able to like unlock. It's, you know how like in Resident Evil games, you always like go and you find the puzzles and like you find the key, and all the keys are like they're puzzles within themselves. And along the way, you're going to like get a lot of jump scares from lichens jumping out of windows at you. And then this big freaking dude with a massive beard and a huge hammer is going to come slamming down and like haunt you down, stalk you through this village. Like, bam, like that's a good sales pitch, man. And you got this image in front of you, that sells it. You almost don't need much more than that. So that's my 3. Anyway, it's a great shot. Lots of composite elements. By the way, if you remember some of these shots, this is from one of the drawings from earlier. Like, all of these pieces were cut out to make some of the concepts when they went, all right, it's time to work out the designs. This, 90% photo bash. The parts that are sketched in are right here. You can see it. You can see it in the muddy brush strokes. This is a mountain range in Colorado. No, I don't know where it is, but it looks like maybe Colorado. Or it could be just Himalayas. And then they use the paint daubs effect. I could do a shot like this. I think I'm going to do one because you can do it in about 45 minutes, something like this. Like 30 or 45 minutes if you have all of your images for your composite found before you even begin. Yeah, something like this could come together in no time. This sky is 100% photograph, and then they just erased out to fit it into the shot. There's no structures here. There's no characters. There's not even any buildings of any kind. Nobody, nothing to show you anything other than like the mood and atmosphere of the location. And then they just had to make sure that they made sure that the lighting was consistent. So if you got the light peeking through here, I'm surprised more of this isn't in shadow, and then a little bit more illumination here. This one right here, hang on, here we go. Oh, I would love to do a game like this. I always shied away from it because like I'm a traditionalist. I like to draw, you know, like you watch my channel, you guys know. I like to draw. So seeing a shot like this, it's like 90% photo bashed from a forest. Like, I think they maybe added the clouds. They definitely understand lighting well enough to get this. This is just like creamy. I love how this turned out. This is whoever did this one should be very proud, but it is 90% photo bashed from structures and old burned out houses. Yeah. Also, mostly photo bashed. This is a different shot entirely, and then they just do like that highlight. When you're doing stuff like this, you need to learn how to separate your foreground from your background, and you need to learn how to, like for instance, right here, look, you see how this is just a silhouette of a windmill? A lot of people who aren't experienced with painting, if they jump into photo bashing, they'll do things where they won't bother to put this separating highlight. You see how there's like a fog or a mist that separates the silhouetted forms? They might also make that just too light. They won't darken it enough, or they'll darken it too much, you know, for instance, because they don't understand how to create that depth of field. And I'm not saying people don't know. I'm just saying like these are the common mistakes that I see when people do photo bashing. I should do a whole lesson on photo bashing. This one, this one's tough because this is a custom piece right here. And I wouldn't be surprised if maybe that relief that's in this door is done entirely in ZBrush. This is definitely a combination of photo bashed texturing going on in the flooring here, and like what's going on this pathway going up to it. Lots of this is photo bashed from an actual castle wall, but there is some painting going on in here. Notice this highlight on this wall catching a little bit of light, and then the silhouette, mostly just a silhouette of the castle. Just a silhouette. I always wanted to own a castle. I wonder if I could get a castle. I heard they're pretty cheap now. I need a helicopter pad though, because they're a little too remote for my taste. I need my Pete's coffee, you know. Lots of photo bashing going on in the shot. These are beautiful pieces, by the way. And the reason, this is why also, this is a meaty video, damn. I believe that this is external development. I believe this is a company that is not Capcom, who they hired to do cinematics, or possibly, and I don't know this because it's been a while since I worked at Capcom, they may have a cinematic department. They're doing that CG film. They're doing another CG film. So maybe it's them. And because these shots, generally you don't do for concept art for games. It's very rare. And this is for the cinematic. This is not for the in-game assets. You'll notice these are sketched in over here, but this grass is all photo bashed. These bushes photo bashed. This floor, this ground, all entirely photo bashed. What they did do is go in and add the mud puddles, because you can see the little bit of a selection around the outside, and it's capturing the reflection from the sky. Probably should have been more, because look at how bright that is. But then it would have drawn too much attention to itself. You can definitely tell that it's photo bashed because you also got all this stuff going on in the arms right here. This is just a selection silhouetted. And then the mountains with this dropped in atmosphere for that fog coming through. This piece, this is photo up here, the fireplace from a photo. The character composited in, dropped in. The lighting is inconsistent, so you can definitely tell that it's like hand-drawn. Some of the edges on things, this character's face, these are painted. This is an artist who's like, I'm going to just paint in more of the survivors. I don't want to look through piles of character shots to try to find them sitting around the way that they would wearing villagers' clothes. It would be like too much work to recapture their clothing anyway. So a lot of this is like just sketched in, and you can tell that it's like loose and sketchy, but the atmosphere, the mood, and the lighting are still there. So it's really capturing the important elements, but like the scale is all weird. Look at the size of this chair, and look at the size of this guy. It's actually one of the weaker pieces in the whole thing, but it's a necessary kind of a piece that you would need to do a shot like this to set up the lighting. This piece is gold. For selling the concept of these lichens out in the woods in this creepy ass snowy forest, this is freaking gold, man. This is creepy. And like, when you put this in the context of everything that the viewer knows about Resident Evil, dude, this is one of the most powerful pieces in the whole slideshow. This scene, I remember this scene distinctly. There was a lot of painting going on. Look at this. Look at how loose you're able to get when you do that combination of the photos. This is photo materials. This is all painted in. She's painted in. He's painted in. That's painted in. Notice like they're like, we're going to have a bunch of lichens. Don't need to render it. Not for marketing. Nobody's even going to notice this. You know, and this video is too long for anybody to really pay that much attention to me pointing it out. I mean, look at this though. It's barely even gestured in, but we get the idea. So when the director is like going, that's the shot, and we're like looking through the animatic, it's like we get to the shot and it's like, this is the dialogue for this scene. When the writer is fine tuning that dialogue, it's like, we've got mood now, we got lighting, we got atmosphere, we got a camera angle, we got everything we need to know who are the players in this scene. It looks like this is early on because they didn't even have all of the characters. Or do they? No, there's Moro. There's the creepy doll lady Demetresque, and what's his name? Heisenberg. And then, of course, Mother Miranda. So, yeah, I guess mostly everybody's here. But it still seems, for some reason, I'm thinking, like, this is maybe early on. No, because they already had all the character designs worked out. So, yeah, I guess this would be when they get to the cinematics, yeah. Schmott. Okay, more photo bashy goodness. This one's probably like a 2-hour painting. Beautiful, though. Really sets the mood for the vineyard. Although, the vineyard looks very different. It's actually a little bit more lit. Photographs of different faces. This one's drawn in because they didn't have one at that angle. Look, it's the same as this, but they changed the expression and then sketched in the horns. Same body, though, across all these. Most people wouldn't even notice that. This door, probably, I would say photo bashed from maybe a real door or ZBrushed, possibly, but the lighting is too perfect on it for it to be painted. These little pieces up here, though, those are painted in. And then these chalices, I think those are braziers, I guess. They're from photos. This texture back here is from photos. This is like, it's actually very different from this in the game. They're not pillars. They're just little statue things. So the room feels much more wide open in the final game. Great lighting on this shot. Looks like it's mirrored. Yeah, they copied and pasted it. And that's why we get the double lights. Very slick. Very slick, Capcom. Photo composite from an old castle. Absolutely. They may have had rough geometry that they pasted in their parts over. When you look at a lot of my concept art from Final Fight Streetwise, you'll see a lot of this stuff. I was very early on into the photo bashing game. When you're working on a photorealistic game, you have to. So check out like my tattoo shop from Final Fight Streetwise. You'll see like, yeah, I did a lot of this. Same kind of inconsistencies in lighting and things like that. But this pattern work is just too intricate and detailed for an artist to sit down and try to draw. Oh, that's a great moody shot. This one's mostly painted. Yeah. There's some texture work here for the bricks that's pulled from texture brushes or texture materials. Lots of dodge and burn. Yeah, lots of dodge and burn. Ooh, great moody shot. This is ZBrushed. This is almost entirely ZBrushed. These elements, this is painted design for the iron key. I recognize that key because I was like so many times where I'm like, I got to go get the iron key. This is definitely ZBrush mock-up, but then I think maybe modified. They sketched in over the ZBrush of the figures. A lot of times what you can do if you got to do statues like this, by the way, you can download a Poser or something like that. There's this program where you can pose bodies. You can actually like pose them together in the way that you need, and it'll morph the flesh, especially if they're just like mostly not wearing clothes. You can pose them however you want, and then render it out or take a screenshot of the bodies and then paint over that for your concepts. I'm giving away all the secrets in this video. This one is probably like, okay, so this is painted. It doesn't fit a lot of the other shots, a lot of the other pieces from the whole thing. Like it's kind of sloppy and kind of messy, and I'm surprised that they put it in here, but the concept is there. There's a scene where you're peeking into the window and you see her, Lady Dimitrescu, like on the phone. And I think they changed it, or maybe originally she was just putting on makeup at this tiny, tiny little desk. But in this case, like the desk itself is a 3D render from an actual desk. And they added the lighting and then added the shot to make it look like you're peeking in, a little voyeuristic. But like notice how kind of off the colors and lighting are on the character. Maybe because this artist maybe got halfway through the drawing and they're like, whoa. She's not going to be like putting on makeup. She's going to be answering the phone. So we need to change the shot. And the artist is like, damn it. So these are ZBrush. The way that I would do this is ZBrush it, especially if it's perfectly symmetrical like that. I would ZBrush something like this out. Or I would pull elements, composite them from old spoons and old filigree patterned antiques. Specifically, they have booklets just full of stuff like this, so you could like just pull all the pieces together to get like to create a design like this, and then just a little bit of photo bashing, a little bit of painting on top of that, and you got yourself a lot of little trinkets like this. This is composited from multiple different European Gothic kind of stylings. There's some painted work going on in here, but like this is like these are composited from photos, pieces from photos to make a very elaborate door. This piece is probably one of the most elaborate pieces in all of this stuff. The person who worked on these doors put more time in than the people who did some of those composite shots of like forests and mountains. This is like a week's worth of work right here, just even compositing it, finding all the right materials and how they fit together. But something like this is so essential when you're developing a game. When we would design any location in Diablo 3, I had to like define the shape language of how parts fit together and what materials are going to work together. And once you define that, once you define a shot like this, everything else falls into place. It's like, oh, this kind of statues and this kind of pattern work and these kind of flowy parts and then this kind of flat, solid shapes and this sort of curves. That's shape language. When you define that, everything else falls into place. It defines itself. You could build a whole mansion from the designs of looking at this one page. A talented 3D environment modeler would. So these are just beautiful paintings. These are just straight up paintings. I think there's a little bit of texture dropped in for this like these walls. This artist is a straight up artist who's like, I want to be an illustrator. This artist, early mock-up, possibly. Maybe they were talking about like giving the player a dagger or a sword. There is a dagger in the game, but you get it for like 5 seconds. And you don't even get to use it, really. So yeah, like that's... Look at how messy. Because they're like, we don't know what these flying creatures are going to look like yet. This artist had 30 minutes to come up with the shot. And it looks like there was a mysterious character out on that rooftop that we didn't get in the final. I love looking at concept art. I love when a game does something like this. So great. When they actually... I mean, first of all, incredible game. If you haven't played it, play it. The way that they did it, where you have to unlock it, it did feel like a reward. This is really exceptional stuff. Some photo bashing going on in here. Separating background from foreground. This especially works with something that's like a dark atmosphere kind of a game. Yeah. You know what? I don't want to go too much into weapons too much. This is mostly, the weapons are mostly composited. But actually, no. This part, hang on, I'm trying to just get that shot. Here we go. This part's painted. This part's composited from antiques. It's too perfect. The materialing on the bronze and on these pearls and this kind of porcelain. Yeah, it's like these materials are just too perfectly lit for it to be. This is the dagger I was talking about, by the way. It's like a vampire hunter dagger. It's kind of neat. But you don't get to use it. This is a composite of, so you got like this forested element. They already had the mood and the atmosphere, combined it with some like a rock face. These, the bridge itself is painted in. That's the only part of this painting that's painted in, is the bridges. Doing these establishing shots for cinematics is more about the atmosphere and the camera angle than it is about anything else. Your character design does not happen in a shot like this. The character design happens in like the shots that we saw at the beginning of the concept art. This whole video. Very beautiful composition of photos. What artist in their right mind would sit down and paint these leaves? Nope. However, these swooshes, painted. Some of these highlights on this fence over here, chunky, sketchy, textured brush, because you want it to pop out. You want to be able to see this delineation. I'm surprised they didn't do a little bit of a fog along here. I wish I could go in and like fix this concept. Sounds, for people who don't know me, they're going to think, oh, what a cocky jerk. But no, there's just a few things where like minor things. I want to finish them all. You don't understand. It's because I love it. It's out of respect and admiration. And sometimes concept artists, they just don't get enough time to make it, like to take it to final. It's not about them or what they want. We're making marketable pieces. That's the big, I don't want to go into like the big lie of our industry, but man, this is raw. This is real stuff. This is production. And production is very different than what you see on, for example, like an art station or something like that. Great shot, a lot of painted elements. You can see the squiggles, you can see the highlights. Painters think in terms of light. They think in terms of light and clusters and color ranges and color relationships more than they think about tiny little details. And like they probably don't zoom in at all on this. This is a photo tree. These are some photo rocks in the background. These stones painted in. You're just painting the highlights. That's the beauty of doing like a horror game, is that, or concept for a horror game, is that a lot of times you're just painting in the highlights with these loose, sketchy details. Like if these artists worked at Blizzard, they'd be like, yeah, just keep rendering on it for a while. But at Capcom, they're like, well, we got to get it done. This is a great composite shot, you know. There's some elements from actual buildings here as a starting point, and there's some elements from actual mountain range here in the background. This waterfall might even be from a photo. This is a mostly monochromatic piece, so shots like this are really easy to do, very fast to do. When I say easy to do, I just mean that they're a lot less complex than if you have to do a lot of textures and materials. And if you look at a lot of the concept art for Naughty Dog, for instance, a lot of their games, they just do grayscale composite shots like this for most of their concept art because it's very cost effective to do. And you get a lot out of it. The doll, this is before the doll design for this particular room. They changed the design of the room itself, but the mood and atmosphere is there, and that's mostly what a concept artist is going to be doing for these shots, these types of shots. This is a composite, but I believe, actually, you know what? It's a composite where they painted over a figure. Yeah, they painted over a figure, so there's a lot of painting going on in this one. This table is all entirely texture, a photo. More atmosphere. That looks like the sky from Metal Gear. Oh, I love it. Good composite. You can definitely see like the selections and cutouts of like this fencing. The artist did not paint that in, but this light right here from this character, absolutely painted in. This character is painted in. This rooftop, not painted in. This is from a photo. This barn right here is from a photo. This fence from a photo. This building, this windmill. Maybe they might have had like a geometry of a windmill, of specifically the kind of windmill they wanted. And even though I believe that they took out all the windmills from the game. I think I was reading in the notes where they were like, yeah, no windmills. No, there is a windmill. What am I talking about? There's like massive windmills. Yeah. That's what it was. I was looking through the concept art for Resident Evil 7, which is also done by the same team. And they were saying no windmills where that one was taking place. So they used some of the concepts in the windmills from that in this. Anyway, these are mostly composites, photo-bashed composites. And this is mostly painted. This is an exceptional piece. Look at that atmosphere. Love this little hit of green. Even though it's mostly monochromatic, this is a creepy mood, a creepy setting. And a lot of people would look at this and go, well, it's still too loose. It's like, yeah, there's like a lot of like unfinished stuff going on. But it's like, you know, for the purposes of the game development, like it's spot on. You know, a lot of people don't realize that most of the jobs that there are in game development are stuff like this, like figuring out how gears work, figuring out designs for handles, figuring out designs for weapons. And that's like almost every game I've ever worked on. This is some composite of materials, but it is actually mostly drawn or drawn from selections. So the artist would have done like the hard-edged polygonal selection tool and then painted in a texture or possibly dropped in some metal textures over the top of it to make sure that it felt like a old used metal. And getting those circles that perfect is really hard too, by the way, so you kind of have to use some cheats. This is mostly done, this is a painting actually. There's no compositing, no photographs done in this painting at all. This is entirely drawn, except for maybe some texturing that we're seeing back here. But for the most part, that might even be just a brush. Now this is a really talented painter. This is a very highly skilled painter. Composited some photo bashing going on in here. But again, this particular concept artist knows what they're doing. You can definitely tell. And a really skilled painter is going to use photos in such a way that like it's going to be very convincing and a very clear view of what the intention is. Oh man, yeah. Lots of great photo elements. Some of the lighting is a little bit off in this, so you can see some of the photo bashing going on. I think this is they use the same shot. So once you have those character design shots from earlier in this whole like video, you could just use the same head of that character like later in the shot. Like, okay, like I'm going to put that character into a scene. Why not? You know, copy paste, reuse. This wasn't even in the game, but this is more of what I was talking about. Designing stuff like this. There's an infinite number of jobs in game development for people who just want to design doorways, keys, platforms, pedestals, statues, doors. A lot of photo bashing going on here from military collections. Those are real, by the way. This is mostly painted except for some textures. You can see it here as well. The loose sketchiness on the characters. Photo bashed character dropped in. This might even be that same shot of a horse that we saw earlier, but maybe they changed the colors on it. Wow. Yeah. Definitely, you guys know what I'm going to say. Ooh. This is a rough shot because it's hard to see what's going on. We've got more of the smelter. These are mocked up in 3D, by the way. These molds. Let me see if here we go. These are mocked up in 3D. This is not painted. So sometimes, as a concept artist, especially nowadays, you have to jump right into ZBrush or Maya. That's why it's beneficial for you to know a little bit of 3D so that you can speed up your painted process. This is a composite of a lot of 3D elements. You can even see the gray boxing on this. It's like they're just parts from like a rough geometry that the artist, like a lot of times what they'll do is they'll give you like a rough geometry for a scene or for a location, and they might have gone, yeah, there's like some pieces in the ceiling and some tubes and some pipes, and like that's there, but like the concept artist went in and like painted in a table, you know, into the same perspective, added a lot of the grime and the texturing onto the walls. Again, you can see a lot of my work on Final Fight Streetwise. When I worked at Capcom, I did the same thing where you can see like mostly just using textures over some of the rough geometry to create a sense of material for the location. Something like this, you'd have to pull from an engine or from some kind of a mechanical device, possibly. Like these are pistons from maybe some kind of a crane. This is mostly painted. What an interesting camera angle to look up like this. Very ambitious of the artist. I wonder why they did this shot. It's not necessary for the game, and it wasn't in a cutscene. Maybe they were going to show you, oh, you know what? I'll bet that fan blade was going to descend down and they would have had to show you, like you would have had to look up to see it, to see the danger that's coming at you. So they would have had to have a shot like this to show the player, like, this is what it's going to look like. That's my guesstimation anyway. More gear work. Again, lots to do here with the keys and the gears. There's Heisenberg fight. Mock-ups of the actual sequence. These are entirely painted. They're storyboarding out the mood and atmosphere of the shots from the first-person camera. The Chris segment captures the mood and atmosphere of Chris coming through the city where it's burning, or the village where it's burning, the Cardo, or Kudo, or whatever it's called. The final battle, this looked nothing like this actually. Not nothing like it, but they certainly like changed the mood and the color of it. Maybe that was a little too Bloodborne with the moon like that. Also, there wasn't really, yeah, there was a ceremony, but notice one thing, by the way, something that you could adopt into your own paintings and your own work, by the way. Look at this, how everything in the background is blurred. It's like really undefined, but it's moody, it's atmospheric. But then the character has these like hard edges on it because that's the focal point. That's what we're looking at. It's like they did a lot of that through a lot of these shots because you need to control what the focal point is. There's a lot of ways to control the focal point. These artists really knew what they were doing when it came to that. And then, of course, as it's all like kind of dying, you see the sun coming out. There's like hope. In the final shots, there's like hope. This is a composite of a photo that's been painted over to look more like a painting. But like this pipe right here is from a photo that's been filtered. And then the jacket is from a photo that's been filtered. The character's face is painted in though. And you can definitely see in the jawline that that's painted. But the hat is from a photo that's got a paint daubs filter on it. And then possibly even the window as well. This might be literally a shot from like a film or something that they used. And you can definitely tell, like, because the lighting is so perfect in some spots, and then it's so like sketchy and loose in others. These photos, or these plants, flowers are the same thing. Why would you paint those if you could just grab them from a photo? These are beautiful shots. Again, lots. This is entirely photo. This middle shot right here, I don't even think a concept artist changed anything on this. But that's not the point. The point of these shots is for the director to get a sense of lighting and color and atmosphere and camera angles. And so like that's why these shots are done this way. Now this is not my specialty. This is not my forte. This is not what I do. But that is definitely what a lot of this is. And in fact, the shots that we see of this character, I believe that's a 3D model of him. They just dropped him into the shot to move him. And then, because it's like the same expression too. You see it's just rotated. And then what we need to see here, look, they don't show her. They don't show, like they didn't render out that truck because it's not necessary. We just needed to see the mood, light, atmosphere. And then there's a lot of, these are concepts for guns. And I don't even think it's necessary to do concepts for guns. Oh, this is the final one right here. I don't know if I can freeze it. I actually captured this on my PS5. Oh, come on, dude. There we go. So here you can see the actor that they actually used, not edited at all. I believe that this is entirely photo bashed together from different parts of characters' bodies. And you can tell because the shoes are roughly sketched in. All the parts that are custom are sketched in with really loose line art, but then you get this perfect photorealistic face. That's a photo bash, baby. So anyway, that's my insight into the concept art of Resident Evil 8. I hope you enjoyed this video. There's certainly, I could go on for hours about this sort of a thing. It has been my job for 20 years. So I enjoy looking at how it's changing and how it's growing. I love to see the new trends and like what people are doing to get things done faster and more effectively. You can't be rigid about these things. You can't be a purist when you're a production concept artist. I know a lot of you might be cringing throughout this video at so much photo bashing, but like, hey, it's proven effective. And, you know, what matters is the results. What matters is the final product, you know, and if people enjoy the final product. And your job as a concept artist is to get that, fill that blank page with a clear vision of something that works for the mood and atmosphere and intention that the director and the game designer wants from you. So those are a lot of insightful tricks and techniques that they're using, I think, when we really analyze it as much as I have here. But hopefully you've gotten some techniques and tricks for yourself that you could use for possibly some of your own paintings. And dudes, that's going to wrap it up for me here on this video. If you're new, you know, please do subscribe. And dudes, until next time, I'll catch y'all on Yondaban and ciao, baby. Oh yeah.